Good morning and welcome back to Sarat Chandra IAS Academy. This is where we left the last lecture. Let's start from here. If you have not seen the part 1, please see the part 1 in order to understand where we are and how we are following. So British mandate for Palestine. So after World War I was over, the Ottoman Empire got divided. The nations of Turkey and Syria came into being, and the Britain was mandated to govern the territories of Palestine, which include the modern territory of Israel, Syria, and rest all. Okay, so we'll see from here what happened. So the Balfour Declaration of 1917 expressed a support for the Jewish people, that the future of this territory will be a nation for the Jewish people from all over the world. So during the mandate, which lasted from 1922 to 1947, the Britain and other powers supported a large-scale Jewish immigration as per the Zionist movement, mainly from the Eastern Europe. The numbers swelling in 1930s with the Nazi persecution. That means the Germany was actively killing the Jews in the Holocaust, and that also increased the immigration. They had nowhere to go and they wanted one home for themselves. So they, under the support of the Britain, came back to the Palestine, where now some Arab people were already living. So there were conflicts between these Jews and Arabs. It is not to be forgotten that Jews were also already living in the Palestine. Not every Jew immigrated. So there was a minority population of the Jews, around 30 to 40%. But large scale immigration made it a majority population, all sort of. Alright. What happened later on, that Arab demands for the independence and resistance to immigration led to a rebellion in 1937. In 1929, 67 Jews were killed in a Hebron massacre, part of Palestine riots against the Jewish immigration in Palestine. So Arabs were definitely not very happy with what was happening in their area right now, and they were against any sort of immigration and any sort of the Zionist movement, which would lead to a national home for Jews. Now let us see why British wanted a national home for Jews. Like, British were Christians, first of all. They had to leave the country or the area. They could have just left it altogether without deciding what happens here. So why did British want a national home for Jews? Alright, so let's see this. That what were the British interest? Everything they do is for a reason. So first of all is the strategic interest. So the British government believed that supporting a Jewish homeland in Palestine could serve its strategic interest in the region. It saw this as a way to secure influence and maintain stability in the Middle East. So not making it 100% Arab or 100% a Muslim region. Otherwise, a complete Middle East would have been a Muslim region. Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, Egypt, everything would have been a complete Muslim region. But the Central Powers wanted one strategic outpost in the middle of the Mediterranean, which connects to the Red Sea, which can control the Suez Canal, and which can serve as a military checkpost to all the alliance of the Central Powers. And this was Israel. And the Jews could fulfill their objective. Making a home for Jews could fulfill their future objective. Even now, Israel has very good relations with all the Central Powers. Alright. So it saw it as ways to secure influence. This we have already seen. And location of Palestine as a bridge between Europe and Asia. So we already know this. Additionally, it was viewed as a means to maintain British control over the Suez Canal, a vital maritime route to India. And India was still under the British influence till 1947. So British did not want to lose their checkpost. Alright. So influential and prominent figures within the British Jewish community, such as Chaim Weizmann, had advocated this, that Jews' homeland should be established in Palestine. Furthermore, the Zionist movement, which sought to establish the Jewish homeland in Palestine, had gained much momentum, especially after the persecution of the Jews by the Hitler in Germany. Some British officials were influenced by a sense of moral responsibility as well. Not everything can be attested to the strategic and political moves. Also, The British government also sought to counteract the influence of other European powers such as Germany, which had shown interest in the Middle East. Supporting a Jewish homeland was seen as a way to maintain British dominance in the region. Alright, so let's see. This whole problem went after the British mandate finished in 1947. The British emptied this, and the problem went to the UN. That please solve this. Just as the Kashmir problem also went to the UN. Alright, so this was a common occurrence which was taking place that time because of Britain emptying many of its colonies, and there were troubled areas all over the world. So this Palestine was also one of these troubled areas, and the problem went to the UN. UN came up with a partition plan. Let's see what was that. So in 1947, the United Nations proposed a partition plan for the Palestinian territories. The plan recommended the division of Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem under international administration. The plan was accepted by the Jewish leadership, but rejected by the Arab leaders who wanted all the land for themselves and nothing for the Jews, which is also the insignia of the Hamas even now. So this was the UN plan, and in 1947, this was proposed to be the state of Israel. This was Jerusalem here in the West Bank right now. This was supposed to be the nation of Palestine and the Palestinian territories of the Arabs. The Golan Heights, you can say, the Gaza Strip and all. And these were supposed to be the territories of Arabs. This was almost 60% of the modern territory of Israel. The Jewish population accepted living in the Negev desert as well as leaving the Arab territories and following the UN plan. But it did not work out for the Arabs, and they maintained their stance that whole country or whole the Palestinian territory should belong to the Arab Sunni Muslims and not any Jewish parts. In 1948, however, things changed when the British mandate completely ended and the Britain was out of the scene. Now, as Britain was out of the scene and UN partition plan was not accepted by the Arabs, the Arab countries, the Arab people came into a direct head war with the Jews. But we must not forget here that despite the Britain leaving the scene, the Jewish country, the Jews in the population were still supported by the Britain and by all the powers that supported Britain, such as let's say Italy, France, USA. They provided much power to the Jew people because, as everybody knew, the Arabs were going to attack the Jews. So Jews decided to declare themselves an independent state. On May 14, David Ben-Gurion, who would become Israel's first prime minister, declared the establishment of the state of Israel. Israel gets recognition by USA and USSR very quickly on the first and the third day. However, following the declaration of the Israel, neighboring Arab states including Egypt, Jordan, Syria and Iraq invaded the newly established state. So you can imagine the plight of the Israel right now. What we see is Egypt invading from this side, the Syria is invading from this side, Iraq invading from this side, as well as Jordan invading from this side. Alright, and this was Israel stuck in the middle. Despite this, outnumbered and facing significant challenges, Israel managed to survive, not only survive but also expansion of its territories. So this proved to be a very bad move in 1948 by the Arab countries. We'll see why this happened, what were the reasons of the defeat. Then came an armistice agreement in 1949. The Arab-Israeli war concluded with a series of armistice agreements, or basically treaties, between Israel and its neighboring states. These agreements established a ceasefire lines and to some extent recognized Israel's existence. The overall fighting leading to around 15,000 casualties, resulting in ceasefire and armistice agreement, with Israel holding much of the former mandate territories, as well as Jordan occupying and later annexing the West Bank. Egypt taking over the Gaza Strip, where all Palestine government was declared by the Arab League on 22 September 1948. So this was the status in 1948. In the next year, 1949, the Armistice Agreement is a UN-mediated attempt to bring peace to Palestine. Israel signs agreement with Egypt, Jordan, Syria and Lebanon to reach a formal peace treaty. So basically, there were many agreements signed during this time. Further on, in 1956, Egypt makes a move, a dirty move you can see, to block the Suez Canal. So this is the Red Sea, this is Gulf of Suez. This is the Suez Canal here, which further goes till the port side of the Egypt and ending into the Mediterranean Sea. This is the Sinai Peninsula. Alright, so Egypt nationalizes the Suez Canal, says it's ours, and bars Israeli ship from using it and Straits of Tiran. This Strait of Tiran is very important because this was the Israel's only way to navigate to the Red Sea via the Gulf of Aqaba. Alright, so another shipping route, Israel aided by Britain and France invades Egypt. Because the Suez Canal was very important for both Britain and France. They could not take the long path from the Africa in order to reach here and there, and Suez Canal was very important for them to directly access the Mediterranean Sea and the Indian Oceans. The Soviet Union, an ally of Egypt, threatens nuclear retaliation, and the US pressurized British, France and Israeli forces to withdraw. The UN deploys a peacekeeping force. So there was some issues between the Egypt and the Israel regarding to the Suez Canal. Now, the question arises that Israel has direct access to Mediterranean Sea. This is, let's say, Israel, and it has direct access to the Mediterranean Sea as well as the Red Sea. This is the Red Sea via its own coastlines. Why does it need Suez Canal at all? Suez Canal is here, let's say, after the Sinai Peninsula. So why does it at all needs the Suez Canal? So the first thing is, Israel does not actually need the Suez Canal to function. It has a very large coastline and it can do all its operations via here. Who needs the Suez Canal then? The Suez Canal is needed by the Britain and France and Italy and USA in order to navigate to the Mediterranean Sea and Red Sea. As I already told you that Israel was heavily supported by these countries and acted as a check post. So Israel had to do against the nationalization of the Suez Canal as well as the ban. That is why it invaded the Egypt. So basically these countries invaded the Egypt through Israel, nothing else. Alright. Furthermore, let us see that Egypt also banned the Strait of Tiran, which was only way to Israel to get to the Red Sea. So this is the Strait of Tiran. Here is the Gulf of Aqaba. Alright, so the Strait of Tiran route served Israel's only port on the Gulf of Aqaba, which was Eilat port. So this had limited economic relevance prior to 1956. Construction of the port of Eilat was only begun in 1952 and was only able to take ongoing vessels to March 1956. So this did not matter so much. It was just because of the power of Britain, France, Italy, etc. that this Suez Canal matter was opted. Anyway, what happens further in 1964 when organizations come into being, which was the precursor of the Hamas in a way. So Palestine Liberation Organization PLO, with a group of the goal of uniting Arab groups and liberations the Palestinian territories through armed struggle, is formed in the Egypt. So it formed in 1964. The whole Palestinian government was completely abandoned by Egypt in 1959 and was officially merged into the United Arab Republic to the detriment of Palestinian national movements. So this Egypt pulled its hands out of this struggle. Gaza Strip then was put under the authority of the Egyptian military administrator, making it a de facto military occupation. That means Egypt officially just pulled back hands from this Gaza Strip and did not administer it directly, but put the military administration there. In 1964, a new organization, PLO, was established by Yasser Arafat. It immediately won the support of most Arab League governments and was granted a seat in the Arab League. Now what happens further? In 1967, there was a 6-day war. So this was when things got ugly. You can again see this is the West Bank. This is Gaza. Negev Desert, Egypt again, Jordan. This is the Dead Sea. This is the Red Sea. Please remember the difference. This is the Hafta and all. So this was the position of State of Israel in 1967. What happened that out of the Suez Canal conflict, which was 10 years ago from this 1955-1956, the Egypt orders the UN forces to leave, closes the Straits of Tiran to Israel again and plans a secret attack against the Israel. But Israel was beware of this, and a preemptive strike, Israel attacked Egypt and later Jordan and Syria. So it did not only attack the Egypt here, but also attacked the Syria as well as Jordan. So capturing Gaza, the West Bank, East Jerusalem and Golden Heights and the Sinai Peninsula. So it basically won everything. Sinai Peninsula came into its occupation, West Bank, Gaza Strip, and the Israel became a very big country that time. Like this, you can see pre 1967 stage and the post 1967 stage here. All right. So Israel expanded into Jordan. It took the West Bank. It took the Golan Heights from Syria. Here, this it still is with Israel. It took the Sinai Peninsula from the Egypt, which was a very large portion, which it might have been unable to control. But the Suez Canal, the occupation of the Suez Canal was the primary thing. So PLO was unable to establish any control on the ground and established its headquarters in Jordan, home to hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, and supported the Jordanian army during the war of attrition, etc. However, later what happened, the Palestinian base in Jordan collapsed with the Jordanian-Palestinian civil war. So these Jordanian people were not very happy that Palestinians are trying to come here in the Jordan. So there was a civil war and they ousted Palestinian from here also. Finally, they went to the Lebanon. So most of the Palestinian militants relocated to South Lebanon, where they soon took over large area, creating the so-called Fatah land. So it's a common, you can see behavior of these people. They first try to come to the Israel from Egypt and establish territories here. Then they try to go to Jordan where they're outs. So they go to Lebanon again. Alright. And create a whole land for themselves there known as Fatah land. Alright. This is the strategic importance of the Suez Canal. You can see Jordan here with its capital Amman. This is Lebanon here, capital Beirut, and it has become the residing place of the Hamas, from where it launches attacks many a time. This is Syria, Damascus, which is in constant conflict. Egypt, which is again in constant conflict and very hub of terrorism. This is Cairo, the capital of Egypt. This is Jerusalem, which is located in the West Bank and now majorly controlled by the Israel. Here you can see the Suez Canal, Gulf of Suez, Gulf of Aqaba. I have told everything here. The port of Said, which is a port to Egypt. The port of Elan, which is a port to Israel and its access to the Red Sea. This is Cyprus, Israel, Syria, Iraq, etc. This you know all. This is Saudi Arabia. Alright, let's move further. You can see the Makkah and Medina here, and Al-Aqsa Mosque in the Jerusalem. Moving further, in 1973, the Yom Kippur War starts with Egypt and Syria attacking Israel again. The war is attempted to reverse the defeat of 1967 war, and on the holiest day of Jewish war, when they are celebrating a festival. So Israel counterattacks and win. The US helped secure disengagement agreement from combatants, etc. So there were many attempts on Israel. However, one major thing came in 1979, the peace treaty. So Egyptian President Anwar Sadat, US President Jimmy Carter, and Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin signed a peace treaty. So this reversed the effect of the 6 Days War, which took place in 1967. So Israel starts leaving the Sinai Peninsula and it come under Egypt's occupation again. So Egypt was happy. The peninsula was occupied by Israeli forces during the 6-Day War, but was returned to Egypt in 1982 under the terms of peace treaty concluded between these countries in 1979. Alright. Now what happens in 1970s, that Palestinian insurgency in South Lebanon peaked in the early 1970s as Lebanon was used as a base to launch attacks on northern Israel and airplane hijacking campaign worldwide. So this Fatah land, which was in Lebanon, this became a major terrorist spot. So Israel also invaded it completely later on. So in 1978, the Coastal Road massacre led to the Israeli full-scale invasion known as Operation Litani. Alright. In 1982, following assassination attempt on one of its diplomats by Palestinians, the Israeli government decided to take sides in the Lebanese civil war, and the 1982 Lebanese war commenced. That means they started support the Lebanese government against these people. The initial results for Israel were successful. Most Palestinian militants were defeated within several weeks. Beirut was captured and PLO headquarters were evacuated. So Israel tried its best to remove all these Palestinian people and Hamas from this Lebanon or the Fatah land. Now came this organization which is at the center of conflict in 2023, the Hamas. Hamas means the zeal or the Josh. So what are they? Let us see very quickly. So the roots of the Hamas go back to the Muslim Brotherhood. This was during the time when British forces were still ruling the Palestine in about 1930s. So the Arab Muslims, one part of the Arab Muslims, made a group named Hamas. So after Israel captured the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan and Gaza Strip from Egypt in 1967, The PLO, vying to liberate the whole of Palestine, would start a guerrilla warfare against the Israel. So Hamas was established after the first Intifada. This is a movement from originating from jihad, killing all the infidels. Broke out in 1987. On December 8, 1987, several Palestinians were killed in a traffic accident involving an Israeli driver, leading to a wave of protests. So basically, the Hamas came into the being. So the Hamas charter was studied with anti-Semitic remarks. Anti-Semitic means anti-Jews. According to the charter, Palestine is an Islamic Waqf land, which it is not. Anyway, consecrated for Muslim generations until the judgment day. That means the last day on earth. Or what they say, Qayamat ka din. So on the day of judgment, so they are saying that basically Islamic land it is. And there is no solution to the Palestine problem except jihad, and all peace initiatives are a waste of time and acts of absurdity. This is simple, violent force of terrorism that intends to kill people, basically, who are right now on the Palestinian lands for them. And that is why it's spreading terrorism. In 1987, the Palestinians staged the first two uprisings or intifadas in Gaza, Israel, and the West Bank. Using mass boycott, civil disobedience, and attacks on Israelis, more than 50 Israelis are killed. The Israeli military kills in retaliation, of course, many Palestinians. Some children were involved. According to B'Tselem, the Israeli human rights organization, Jewish settlers kill 54 Palestinians. The US and UN criticize Israel's use of lethal force. So this has been a very controversial move by Israel. In 1991, in response to the Intifada, the Madrid Conference. This is very important. A historical gathering of all participants in the Arab-Israeli conflict is chaired by US and Russia. So in 1993, after this, Oslo declarations come into power. The Oslo Declaration of Principles is signed by Israeli Prime Minister and Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat. It established a timetable for the Middle East peace process. In 1995, Oslo II is signed, a second agreement in which the Palestine Liberation Organization recognized the state of Israel, and Israel allows Palestinians limited self-governance in Gaza. In the year 2000, President Bill Clinton, Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, and Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat gathered at the Camp David summit, a meeting intended to end hostilities. It ends without any sort of agreement. After this, we will see in the third part the role of India and the connection of India with Israel, and finally what's happening in 2023.